let's get to Racket Rundown, brought to you by Wilson. Little bit weird because it's the staggered thing with the WTA and the ATP, where Beijing is finishing on a weekend, where men finished on, like, we had that Sinner Alcaraz epic. Like, imagine the expectation for these two always being like a 12 out of 10 and then delivering a 14 out of 10. Like, these guys are insane. If you will go watch the clips of their most recent match, it looks like they're playing video. You know, like a 12-year-old gets really good at a video game?
Yeah.
And they don't miss?
Yeah, that's like my peak physical performance. It's been really good video games.
My thumbs.
Yeah.
These guys are just studs. I mean, if you look at the consistency that they're starting to put together, and these comparisons will inevitably only get bigger. Mats Wilander said, like, I think they're playing at a higher level than the big three ever did. I love Mats. I don't know that I'm there yet. I think that's a massive statement. But I think it does point to something that we can all agree on, is that these two are kind of separating from the field. And I think that's almost an understatement without being disrespectful to the field. If you kind of throw away the US Open performance from Alcaraz and you look backwards from when he was getting over his elbow injury and winning Roland Garros, winning Wimbledon, finaling Olympics, had the hiccup Cincinnati US Open, coming back, winning against Sinner, and then, now is just rolling in Shanghai again. It's almost as consistent of a run as we've seen from him. We've seen brilliance and 4 slams and all this stuff, but like at the end of last year at the US Open, he kind of faded a little bit, and that's obviously against his own shadow, right? And then Sinner, even with all this crap going on, with the worry and WADA and will he get suspended, and I'm sure there's a million things going on behind the scenes that he has to participate in because he has no other choice. And still keeping that level up is just absurd. So props to those two. I mean, there's not much of a rundown beyond those guys just, looking like they're going to be all-time greats if they're not already kind of there and or trending. Are. I mean, yeah, Alcaraz one. I mean, listen,
insane.
I obviously effusive with my praise of Andy Murray, and Alcaraz has more majors than Andy Murray. Like, this is what we're seeing in real time. Sinner winning 2 this year, number 1 in the world. It's just absurd, and I just hope we get to see it for a decade. And it'd be fun if all of a sudden someone plays the role of Novak and breaks them up and starts beating them as well. I feel like I'm watching history repeat itself a little bit, but it's fun. Someone whose results haven't been as predictable as Sinner and Alcaraz, and the headlines have been maybe not positive, not negative, but just like kind of a little uncomfortable with her breaking up with Brad Gilbert, coaching change, a lot of speculation even on this show on what she might do next. Picks up Matt Daly as a coach. It's fun to see. I know Matt Daly is one of James Blake's best friends. I remember watching Matt Daly win like junior hard courts in San Antonio when I used to live in Austin. Crafty player then, good guy. This Coco going through and winning that Masters 1000 on the heels of disappointment, probably not defending the US Open and maybe not playing her best, and the doubles and everything else. This was a massive rebound for her that was needed for this season, and she played great. She got through a tough one against Badosa in the semis, and then I think she played the best match that she's played since maybe Cincinnati last year. The US Open she won, but it was like there weren't a lot of straightforward wins even in the run to the title there. Beating Muchova, who's in form, 6-1, 6-3. It's the best match I've seen her play in a long time. She certainly had it going. The forehand was working. She was committed. Massive, massive rebound. Circle this result if she continues that progression towards, or if she makes another run at that number 1 ranking next year, getting back to 2, putting herself in the conversation for slams, maybe starting in Australia. Circle this result for Coco. And I also have to think, and I have no inside info here, as per usual, but a lot of the conversation is, okay, she's going to bring on a team. I don't know if we on the heels of Gilbert and maybe some names floating around that are very high profile. No disrespect to Matt Daly. I completely respect his tennis IQ. I love what he's done. He's firmly put himself in the conversation for this being like a full-time thing and maybe not needing a super coach. Certainly off to the right start. And if she has a really strong finish to the year, I actually don't know why you would put someone else in there, maybe change the dynamic, change the flow, maybe run it through the finish line. But props to Coco and team. It's as good as she's looked in a long time. Certainly the best she's looked this year. Was good out of the gates in Auckland, played really well in Australia, was like sneaky close to making the final and potentially winning that event. Lost a tough one against Sabalenka, a couple of points here and there. But she is fully back on track. Props to Badosa for continuing her comeback. Quarterfinals US Open, she had won in DC, semifinals here at another Masters 1000. She is playing like a top 5 player for the last 3 months of the season. And circle this one too. I don't know what the odds are with Muchova, and I don't know if there's a bet available for her winning a major at some point. She's not young, by tennis standards. Her top level is great. Beating Sabalenka there, Coco, all-world performance, but on the heels of making the semis of the U.S. Open, after being off 9 months, by the way. Like, imagine making the semis of the U.S. Open 2 years in a row, but actually not playing tournaments because you're injured for 10 months in between because of various surgeries. Muchova has the game and the top level to potentially win a major. And her on grass is, as she's kind of coming forward a little bit more, just a little sneaky thing. I don't know what the odds say. I should have probably looked it up, but like if they're generous, it's not the word. I'm not telling you to bet. I'm just saying it's not a bad one. Props to her though. She is really fun to watch because the way she plays is so differentiated for the WTA tour and frankly the men's tour now. No one comes in anymore. No one, we treat it like the men are coming in all the time. They're not. They're coasting back 6-7 feet behind the baseline. Loved watching her. Happy for Coco. And then you were telling me, Mike, you're kind of chippy about Emma Navarro story, and this isn't like a regular Racket Rundown brought to you by Wilson, where we're going through the major events. You want to bring attention to her playing in a 125 in Hong Kong, loses first round in Beijing, and then goes and plays. So I guess the equivalent would be like a top 10 player in baseball, somehow having off time and wanting to fill those 2 weeks by playing AA ball to either find rhythm or not lose rhythm. But there was like a negative reaction to this.
Yeah. I mean, the people that live under the bridge on X were all pretty upset about it, But
why?
I mean, I don't know. And she came out and clarified. She's like, listen, guys, even no matter what I do in Hong Kong, the points don't apply for the WTA finals. People were like, oh, she's just trying to like scrape points to stay in the 8th spot ahead of the WTA finals, but none of them matter.
Why are people so offended regularly when players make decisions? Like, do they think they know better than like the player and their coaches and everyone in the room?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure when I Google her name, it says tennis player. So I'm pretty sure you're supposed to go play tennis.
Well, listen here. Let me break this down for you. Like, you can't make World Tour finals by winning 125s. It's a minor league event, right? Like it's not the points of really anything. Frankly, it's below her pay grade now. But let's level set. Okay. Lose first round. She got a bye, so it was technically second round, but her first round in Beijing. And she has 10, 12 days before she starts. And remind me where the next tour event is in the WTA.
What is it? It's Wuhan?
Wuhan, exactly. So she goes and takes a wild card into a 125. There's really no consequence aside from getting tournament matches, right? So you either practice for 12 days because Asia is not exactly the place where you can come home for a training block and then fly back over, right? Because it's, 3 days of jet lag both ways. This is a very logical, obvious decision. It's a place that she played well last year. I think she won last year when she was making a run.
That's why she was allowed to play.
Yeah, it's like good vibe. Well, you can get a wild card.
Well, no, because I think she's top 10. She wasn't eligible to play.
No, I know.
That's what people were saying.
You can't enter certain level tournaments if your ranking is too high. So it used to be like below 50, you couldn't enter a certain level, but you can still take a wild card, right? So the tournament, conversely, like we're like support lower levels of tournaments. Is there like a caveat, except if someone who's top 10 wants to bring their star power to a minor league event? Like, can you imagine, like, think of like when a massive pitcher, like if Clayton Kershaw goes and does rehab starts in Frisco, Texas, everyone's like, that is awesome. I'm going to see him. Like, why would you not want that scenario in tennis?
I agree.
It makes no sense. I don't get any criticism here. Like, this is just a bunch of keyboard warriors that need their daily fix of being pissed off about something because, you know, she should go play it. Like, get matches in. Go play 5 matches.
That's what she said. She's like, 2 weeks is a long time just to be training.
You can't come home.
Yeah.
It's not as if you're playing in Memphis and then you got to travel to California. Like, you could go home and have a training block. That's not an option when you're in Asia, right? Like, you got to go play matches. That's a completely logical thing to do. She can take a wild card. She didn't break any rules. Tennis is like, listen, you know, like, oh, you're taking points from lower ranked players. This is sports. You got to beat the person across from you. Are you kidding me? This is like kill or be killed. Like, what are we talking about? And you got me fired up going into our big interview, a controversial interview with PTPA. We're going to get that on the other side. This has been Racket Rundown, brought to you by our friends at Wilson. Hey there, Chuckers. You know, I used to rely on precision, power, and maybe a little bit of innovation to keep my serve untouchable. Well, turns out those same things aren't just for tennis. They're for racing too. Who knew? Since 2017, Lexus Racing has been doing exactly that. Precision, power, and a whole lot of innovation. Last year, they teamed up with Vassar Sullivan and snagged the 2023 IMSA GTD Pro Class Championship with their Lexus RCF GT3. And let me tell you, that car's got more horsepower than I ever had in my serve. Don't tell my ego. But like any good athlete, one win just isn't enough. All right, a little too personal, but that's fine. They're back and they're gunning for another title in 2024. You can't miss those Dayglow yellow and black Lexus RCF GT3 race cars on the track. And if you do somehow miss them, you'll definitely hear those V8 engines roaring louder than my victory yell after a big match. So if you want to see what happens when you mix tennis-worthy precision with race car power, follow Lexus Racing every weekend. Head over to lexus.com/motorsports to learn more about Lexus Racing and get all the details on upcoming races.